All right, folks, this is a quick run through of how to do a perpetual ball bounce animation that we will create in Maya and assemble the final in Blender. Here we go. First, I need to create a project. So I'm just going to put it on my desktop, although that's not recommended. But for the sake of this tutorial, it's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to call this Perpetual Ball Bounce. All right, so I will hit accept. And now I have a new project on my desktop called Perpetual Ball Bounce. Now what I have to do is I need to set up my scene. So to do that, I'm going to create a sphere, which will be my ball. And I'm going to just move it up here out of the way for a moment while I go and create my floor. There we are. I'm going to change the size of the floor, not by scaling it, but by going to the input node where I'll change the width to 12 and the depth to 12. All right. Now what we'll do is we're going to go ahead and set up our camera. So I'm going to be rendering this as, in an orthographic window actually. So it'll be a flat animation. So I'm going to go to Panels Orthographic Side, which is what we're going to be looking at as we animate this. And I'm going to turn off my grid here, but I'm going to set up my render size as well, just to make sure that, as I set up my camera, how I want it to be, that everything's right and I won't have to go and affect it later. So I'll go here to this clapboard with a gear, and I'm going to go ahead and click on that and make sure that my render size is set to HD 1080. And then I'll hit close. Now what I can do is I can come over here and activate my resolution gate. And the resolution gate is going to show me the renderable area of this scene. And so I'm going to just go ahead and set it up like that. And then I'll middle mouse click and drag and, here we go. There we go. That's better. Sorry, I hit Alt on my Mac keyboard. I should be hitting Optional. But you need to hit Alt on yours if you're working in Windows. Okay, anyway. So I'm going to set the scene up to, basically the bounds that I want to have in this animation. So this should do the trick. Okay. Now, before I animate this, I want to make sure that a couple of preferences are set up properly. So I'm going to come here to the bottom right-hand corner. I'm going to click on this icon here with the gear and the running man. And we'll make sure that the playback speed is set to 24 FPS times 1. And then I'm going to go to animation, and I'm going to make sure that the in and out tangents are set to linear. That's necessary for my workflow. Okay, so far so good. So our render is set up, our scene is set up. Let's save it. File, save scene as, and we'll save this as perp ball bounce _01. Okay, there we go. So now what we're going to do is we're going to block out our animation. Now I want to make sure that my timeline is actually starting at frame 1. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on this 0 here and hit 1. And there we go. So we have 1 and we're going to frame 13. That's what I want for this. I'm going to be animating on ones as I block out my animation. And by blocking, I mean that I'm going to set my keys or my extremes, and I'm going to set my breakdowns. All right, let's get on with that. So to do that, I'm going to go to frame 1, select the ball, and I'm going to go ahead and hit the S key. The S key is how we set keys in Maya. Now, this is going to be a loop, so I want it to start and end in the exact same place, and I will be animating on ones. So I'm just going to go to 3 and set the end frame. So I've got my start frame and my end frame, and then on frame 2, I'll hit W here to go to my move tool. I'm going to drag this object down and just put it there and then hit S. So now I have my extremes, up, down, up. Okay, so the extremes are set, that's great. The scene is set up, that's great. Let's go ahead and save again. You should be saving often. I don't have much to lose here, but I want you to learn the right habits. Save often. Okay, now my approach is similar to a traditional animation approach in that if I want to have a new drawing, then I need to insert a new frame between the frames that I currently have. Just as if I were animating on paper, if I had 2 pieces of paper, I'd insert a new piece between the first and second to create my new drawing. So, but there are some tools that I want to work with to get that done efficiently and properly. And those tools can be found here one will be found in Visualize and the other is going to be found in Windows. Let's go here first. Windows, Animation Editors, Dope Sheet. Now the dope sheet will show me all the frames that I've set on all of the channels for whatever object is selected. So what we're going to do is I'm going to move my cursor to frame 2 and we're going to begin to insert new drawings, as it were, or new frames. But we're going to allow Maya to help us a little bit because what Maya does really, really well is creates average positions. The perfect average between, let's say pose A and pose B. If I insert a new frame and I'm in linear tangents, that new frame is going to be exactly between point A and point B. Okay, but to help me with that visually, I'm going to go to Visualize and go to my ghosting editor, which is a newish tool. It came in 2024. I like it a lot. I use it a lot. And what I'll do is I'm going to go create ghost from selection. So that's going to create a ghost. And we can't see it right now because this eyeball is not activated. So I'll activate the eyeball. And then I want to make sure that I have custom set here with frame step 1, pre and post frames 1 and 1. So it's 1, 1, 1, and make sure that the eyeball is on. So now my ghosting is working, and what I have is this to this to this. Let's go ahead and start building this animation. So we're going to build it up by thinking of this. As the ball falls towards the ground, it's going to keep on accelerating. Okay? It's going to keep accelerating all the way down. So what that means is that every time that I have a new drawing inserted, that the gaps are actually going to get wider from one frame to the next. And the way that we can do it is by inserting frames. And watch this. I'm going to select these 2 frames here, just those 2, please. Yep. And then I'll middle mouse click and drag them over by 1 frame. Now, here's what you're going to notice. The previous frame, this turquoise one, is where our start frame was. This kind of sickly pink looking frame is where the next frame was, okay? But now we have this new frame and it's put the selected object or the current frame is perfectly averaged between these 2 positions. So that's done. I'm going to hit S. So now what we have is this to this to this, okay? And then we have this again, but yeah, we're not going to worry about that right now. Now I'm going to leave my cursor at frame 2, and then I'm going to shift select and click on that new frame that was created, and then I'll middle mouse click and drag it over by 1. Now, in order for middle mouse to work, you must have a transform tool on in your window. In this case here, I have the move tool on. It makes sense. So make sure that it's there or else that tool won't work. All right, so I can go ahead and set a key again. I'll hit S. I'll select the key, middle mouse click and drag it over by 1, hit S. Select it, move it over, hit S, select it and move it over and hit S. Now, I've got all the frames that I want from here down to here. So the ball is getting farther and farther apart. Watch this one here. It's going to get farther and farther from the current frame. And that tells us that it's accelerating. It's going faster and faster until it hits the ground. Boom. Okay? All right? And then, of course, it pops back up. Well, we want to fix that as well. And so this is a little bit different. What we do to create the deceleration is we select just the last frame and we move it over by a frame, and then we move our cursor over, or we will do that. It's actually fine because I started there, and I'll hit S. So I'll move the cursor over again, move the frame over, hit S. Move the cursor over, move the frame over, hit S. Move the cursor over, move the frame over, hit S, and one more time, cursor over, frame over, and we hit S. So now what we have is, as this ball is coming up, you'll notice that the gap between the current frame and the next frame is not going to get bigger, but it's going to get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and then done. Okay? So now what we have is we have a blocked out animation. Okay? And what I'll do is I'll turn the ghosting off by turning off this eyeball, and then we can just put that tool away. I don't really need the dope sheet anymore, so I'll go ahead and put that away as well. And we'll save our file, save scene as, and we'll save this as version 3. Yay. Okay, now, if I play that back, here's what we get. Yeah, it's really fast. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to take this animation, which is currently on 1s, which means, each new position has a keyframe. Okay? So, but what we're going to do is we're going to take it from 1s to 2s. And in order to do that, we're going to use a different window again, and this will be our graph editor. So we'll go to Animation Editors, Graph Editor. And you'll notice that we have this green curve here. The green curve represents that up and down motion. And then we have all these other curves. We don't need those frames at all. So I would probably just get rid of them by selecting the curves themselves and then deleting them. So I'm only left with Translate Y. Okay. Now I'm going to select that curve by just drawing a marquee selection box over it. You could do it like this. You could also select all the keys if you want, whatever you like. You could select the curve, okay? And what we need to do to take this from 1s to 2s is we need to scale our time. So we're going to go to Edit, Scale, Options. And in this window, what we want to do is we want to time scale by a value of 2. 2 times 1 is 2. And so that will mean that our timing will go from being on 1s to 2s. And then what we also want to do is we want to set our pivot. So our first frame is 1, and we want to scale from there. So I'm going to type 1 in that box. So I now have time scale 2, pivot 1. Let's scale the keys. And you'll notice now that 2 and 4 and 6 and 8 and the others, they don't have a red line on them. They don't have key frames on them, but they have actually been in betweened by Maya. They are moving still, but they don't have keys on them, and we don't need to have keys on them. This is fine. It's all gonna be good. So what I'll do is I'm gonna come over here to my graph editor to move on, and we're gonna hit A. And then I'm going to grab, see this 1 and this 13 here, these tabs? I'm going to take and I'm going to drag this 13 all the way until it says 24. I don't want 25 because that frame is the same as this one. And it will make for that will mean that there are 3 frames as opposed to 2 up there. I don't want that. So what I'm going to do is just, make sure I have 1 to 24, which is 1 second in animation. And I'm going to play back the animation. Let's see what we have. That's lovely. It's a little rigid at the top, but we'll go ahead and fix that right now. Okay, so let's save it. File, save scene as. And again, it probably seems like I'm going a little crazy with the saving, but I'm trying to teach you right habits here. So before I do that, what I want to do is I just want to make sure that the ball is always accelerating on the way down or always decelerating on the way up. And right now you'll notice that this line is straight here and here. So that means that that actually isn't happening. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab these two frames. You could either draw a marquee box around very carefully and just grab those two like that, or you can shift, select, and click and drag. Now, make sure you hit W again, or make sure that you have a move tool on and hold down shift and middle mouse click and drag those keys up just a smidge so that we have a constantly accelerating curve. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, as the line gets steeper, that means the motion is getting quicker. And as the line becomes less steep, that means that it's slowing down or decelerating, okay? So the steeper the curve, the quicker the motion. All right, that's good. I'm happy with that. Let's go ahead, and what we'll also do is just quickly smooth our curve out. So I'm going to select all the keys except for this one here. Selected keys are white, okay? And I'm going to select this button here that says Auto Tangents Legacy. And let's play back our animation. And you'll notice that it's nice and smooth now. Looking good. Okay, so now I've edited my animation. I'm happy. Let's go ahead and save it. And now it's time to render and then assemble it using Blender. Okay, so we'll render and then we'll go to Blender. Okay, to render, what we're going to do is we're going to play blast. So I want to actually increase the quality of my render just a wee bit. So to do that, what I'll do is I'm going to select, now watch the edges of the ball here, by the way, as I do this. I'm going to turn on multi-sample anti-aliasing, and you'll notice that the ball becomes less pixelated on the edges. So that's nice. And then I'm also going to come to this next button here, which is motion blur, and turn it on as well. So now when I play back my animation, oops, there we are. When I play back my animation, you'll notice that we now have motion blur on it, adding to the effect. Isn't that pretty? Okay. All right. Let's save it one more time, because this is my render file. I'm ready to render. It's going to be great. Away we go. Okay. So to render, what we'll do is we'll come to the timeline, right mouse click on it, and choose Play Blast Options. In Play Blast Options, we want to make sure, and let me reset the settings here, okay? We want to make sure that the following settings are done. One, I'm going to turn off Show Ornaments. I'm also going to come up here and turn off my grid. Don't need to see it. I'm going to come here and I'm going to choose Format Image. And then I'm going to choose Ping Images. You can also do JPEG if you like. I like Ping. My display size is going to come from my render settings. My scale will be set to 1. My frame padding I'll set to 2. And the reason for that is that I have 24 frames. And 24 has 2 digits in it, 2 and 4. So we want to have 2 as our frame padding. We want to actually make sure that we turn on Save to File. And then we're going to rename this file. So we'll just call it Perp Ball Bounce. That's perfect. Okay. And then I could say underscore final or something, something along those lines. Okay, so there we are, Perp Ball Bounce Final. Let's see where it's going to save those files. So, because if we're going to save a file, we should know where it's going. So I'll click on Browse, and you'll notice that it's going into my project folder, into the Images folder. Yay. Okay, that's great. Let's go ahead and render our scene. So I'll hit Play Blast, and it's just going to run through the motion of rendering it really quickly. Okay, that's done. We can minimize Maya and we can pull up Blender. Now in Blender, I'm going to create a new scene here. We want to create a new video editing scene. Oops, I don't want to save that, sorry. I looked away for a second and clicked on the wrong thing. There we go. Don't save. There we go. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to load our sequence as well as an image sequence into our timeline here. So to do that, what I'll do is I'll hit Shift A in Blender and I'll choose image sequence. Now I'm going to have to navigate to my desktop into my Perpetual ball bounce folder, and then I'll have to go to images where I'll select all of my frames. Okay, and then what I will do is I'll hit add image strip. Okay, so now what we have is, there we go, it's lovely, perfect. Actually, I'm going to do that one more time and try one other quick thing here. Okay, so frame 1 is where I want it to be. Shift A, image sequence. If I grab one frame and then I make this 24, let's see what happens. 24. You could also choose the channel that you want it to be on. So let's see what happens with this. So 1 to 24, and I'll hit add image strip. So it's not going to, I was just experimenting there. You'll pardon me for doing that. Anyway, it's okay. Let's move on here. Okay, so we'll delete that and do the original again, because I saw that when I was loading the image strip. I thought, oh, I wonder if you can now load them that way. It's way more convenient to just select one frame, but no, it doesn't work. So let's move on. We'll just call that a comedic moment. Okay, so I'm going to select my first frame, and I'll select my last frame. Okay, let's see here. I don't want 26 frames, so I'll make it 24. I still like that's concerning me, and I'll put it on channel 2. Okay, let's see here. That looks great. Let's add an image strip, and I'll scrub it, and we can see our animation here. That's beautiful. Now, I actually want this thing to loop 3 times. So here's what I'm going to do. I'll go ahead and I'm going to right mouse click on it and choose duplicate strips. And I'll drag these strips. Come on. Oh, I didn't want that down in that. Let's just move it up here. There we go. And I'll do that again, or hit Shift E, and I will make sure that we have 3 strips that are back to back to back. So now I have this looping animation cycle. That's lovely. Okay. I also want to set my start and end frame here. So we're going to set this to 72 frames because 24 times 3 is 72. So, and if I were to, play back my animation now, we'll see that it's going to, basically loop 3 times. It's lovely. As a matter of fact, it'll just keep looping because that's what it does. All right. So there we go. That's good. We want that. Now, I also want a background. So what I'm going to do is I will just create this thing called, Shift A, and I'm going to choose color. And I'm just going to make it white. So there it is. And then I'll drag this over here like so, and I'm going to drag the end of it to the end of my animation. So now if I play back my animation, you'll see that it's playing on a white background. Well, that's exciting and cool. Perfect. All right. The other thing that I want to do is just label it really quickly. So I'm going to throw some text in this as well. And so to do that, what I'll do is just basically, again, I'll Shift A and I'll say create text. And that text, I will type what I wanted to say here, which will be perpetual ball bounce. Yay. And let's go ahead and we'll actually make the size of the text, let's say 30, because I want to add a little bit more here. And so we'll go perpetual ball bounce. Oh, I'll type it in again. Perpetual ball bounce. T posthumous. Okay, so that's my name. Okay, so there we go. So we have that text. Now I want to change the color. So we'll make the color black by just dragging this color slider down here. And I'm going to move this up over top of the whole thing. So there we go, and drag it out like so. And now what we have is we have this perpetual bulb. Now, obviously I don't want the text sitting where it is. So I can scroll down to transform and go to Y, and then I can drag this down so it's basically sitting here, in the middle of the gray. Isn't that exciting? Yeah, I thought you'd like that. Okay, but here we go. So I've got my perpetual ball bounce animation. I've got a background. I've got the text. This is all assembled. It's looping 3 times. So we can go ahead and just play that back, and that's going to be perfect. That's exactly what I want. All right. So now what we have to do is we have to output this thing. We have to render it and final it, and then we'll be done. So to do that, I'm going to come up here to my output, and I'm going to click on this file folder. This is the default tool that's open when you open Blender. But I'm going to navigate to my movies folder, and we'll name this file, and I'm going to call this, you guessed it, perpetual ball bounce. Yay. And I'll hit accept. So that's great. And what we want is we want to make an FFmpeg video. Then we're going to go to encoding, make sure that it says MPEG-4, the video codec H.264 with an output quality of perceptually lossless. Okay, that will do the trick. That's basically everything that we need to do. Let's quickly save our file. File, save as, navigate to our folder, put it in the perpetual ball bounce folder, and we'll call this perpetual ball bounce and assemble. There we are. Okay, and I'll go ahead and hit save. There it is. And everything is good. So now what I'll do is I'll hit render and render animation, and it's going to run through its process. It's actually happening on my other screen here, but it is done. We're good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what that window looks like. There it is. This is what my final render will look like. But to play it back, I'll grab this folder. And again, I'm working on Mac, so it's going to look a little different. We'll go to movies, and here's my MP4. So I want to rename it. So we'll do that first, rename. And I'm going to get rid of these frame numbers here. So there it is. And then I'll right mouse click on it, and I'll go ahead and play the animation back for you. So here's the final. And if I scrub it or play it, this is what we get. Okay? And that would be the end of the assignment. So, good luck. Have fun putting this all together. And I'll look forward to seeing your assignments in our feedback sessions. We'll talk to you later. Peace.